It only took less than 24 hours for a love celebration to devolve into a terrible tragedy. What ought to have been the start of a lifetime together turned into a horrific crime that left the whole neighborhood in shock. Her young wife had passed away, and at the heart of it all was the man she had trusted with her heart, a preacher she adored for his ferocious teachings on morals and religion. This is a tale of treachery and deceit, where a meticulously planned lie came to light in the most horrific manner, revealing the lengths one man will go to in order to preserve a secret he believed he could keep hidden forever. Preacher Isaiah Blackwell was well liked by his followers, but he carried a heavy load of guilt that would eventually ruin the life he professed to value. Full of love and optimism, Bianca Ellington felt that their relationship was sacred. She clung to the conviction that they were following a course dictated by religion and accepted Isaiah's assurances of purity and dedication. However, behind their vows was a reality she could never have foreseen, a truth that would destroy the basis of their relationship and have unimaginable repercussions. We've all been taught to trust the people we care about and to believe in love. However, what happens if that trust is used into a weapon? When the person you care about the most puts up a front of morality just to betray you in the most heinous manner, leaving destruction in their wake. We shall learn about the circumstances that led to their tragic coupling in this narrative. We'll look at the deception, the conflict, and the fatal decision that made all the difference. What took place on the night of their wedding? What was the reason for Isaiah's extreme measures to hide his secret? And how, just hours after their vows, did everything fall apart? Greetings from Unseen True Crime Story Headquarters. I appreciate your support as we continue to grow and provide both untold and told real crime tales every day, viewers and subscribers in particular. Reminder, remember to subscribe to this channel. One individual who carried his beliefs like armor was Isaiah Blackwell. He was a preacher in his mid-30s who was well known in his community for being an ardent and uncompromising moral voice. Crowds flocked to Isaiah's captivating lectures, anxious to hear his advice on leading a morally upright life. He was more than just a spiritual leader to many. He was a source of inspiration and direction. However, Isaiah's meticulously manicured facade concealed a very private battle that had influenced his life in ways that few could fathom. Isaiah's life as a child was everything from simple. He was often made fun of by his classmates when he was younger. He was often made fun of by his peers for deeper-than-anyone reasons. He would carry a deep feeling of uneasiness into adulthood as a result of these encounters. Isaiah was taught early on to conceal his weakness behind a strong, self-assured facade. By the time he was a teenager, he had mastered the art of concealing the cause of his greatest humiliation, a secret he swore to keep safe at all costs. Isaiah turned to religion for comfort in his early 20s. The church turned to become his haven, providing him with a sense of direction as well as a means of protecting himself from the dangers of sexual relationships. Isaiah was able to set limits that matched his own fears once he became a pastor. He might avoid relationships without drawing suspicion by promoting chastity and cleanliness. Isaiah seemed to the outer world to be a man of conviction and principle. In actuality, however, his moral position sprang from a concern that the truth about him would be exposed. On the other hand, Bianca Ellington was a vibrant, kind lady. Bianca was known for her good heart and beautiful beauty in her late 20s. She was raised in a devoted and encouraging household where traditional values and religious beliefs were prevalent. She believed in the sacredness of marriage because of the strong respect her parents had given her for commitment and love. Bianca had faced many obstacles throughout her life, but she persevered because of her positive outlook. She devoted her days to fostering and motivating young brains while teaching at a nearby elementary school. She often volunteered at neighborhood activities or went to church services in the evenings, when her religion provided her with solace and direction. Bianca initially got to know Isaiah during one of these services. No one else ever spoke to her as he did, and his sermons had a way of penetrating her soul. His advice on leading a purposeful life and practicing spiritual discipline struck a deep chord with her. Bianca saw in Isaiah the type of moral leader she had always hoped to marry, and she appreciated his enthusiasm and commitment. They clicked right away. In sharp contrast to the reserved demeanor he had developed over the years, Isaiah was pulled to Bianca's warmth and genuineness. In exchange, Isaiah's charm and self-assurance enthralled Bianca. She thought he was an honest guy who lived according to his principles. Isaiah's position on abstinence became a distinguishing characteristic of their relationship as it developed. Citing his devotion to his religion as justification, he urged that they be pure until marriage. This was both difficult and motivating for Bianca. Even while she found it difficult to accept the restrictions it imposed on their closeness, she respected Isaiah's commitment to his values. Bianca's family and friends admired Isaiah for his principles. They saw him as a guy of high moral standards who would do all in his power to protect and respect Bianca. Their partnership, a dazzling display of faith and dedication, became the talk of their church. However, things were not as flawless as they seemed. Isaiah sometimes showed signs of uneasiness with physical intimacy. His reluctance to participate in even the tiniest acts of intimacy and his avoidance of certain discussions on their future caused Bianca to wonder. She chose to trust in the guy she believed she knew, despite her reservations. Neither of them could have predicted how profoundly their lives would alter as their wedding day drew near. Bianca was eager to start a path of love and dedication and was full of enthusiasm and optimism. But knowing that his meticulously crafted facade was about to be put to the ultimate test, Isaiah was overcome with worry. As a tribute to faith and tenacity, their marriage was hailed as a match made in heaven. However, behind the surface of their vows was a secret that would soon be revealed and transform their love story into one of treachery and unfathomable sorrow. It was finally the day that everyone had been looking forward to. The church and loved ones celebrated Isaiah Blackwell and Bianca Ellington's wedding, which was the year's biggest event. The choir sung songs that brought the congregation to tears, and the church smelled of fresh flowers. Everything had been well thought out. It seemed to onlookers to be a marriage approved by heaven. With a confident and joyful grin, Isaiah stood at the altar. He seemed to the crowd to be a guy who was utterly devoted to the lady who had won his heart and was prepared to begin a life together. Beneath his calm facade, however, was a man tormented by worry. Instead of fantasizing about wedded bliss, his mind was racing with the worry that the night would destroy all he had put so much effort into creating. Brimming with love and excitement, Bianca walked down the aisle looking stunning in her flowing white gown. She had dreamt of this day since she was a little child, and Isaiah seemed like the ideal guy to spend it with because of his unshakable commitment and strong faith. She didn't have any reason to question him or think that the guy she was making a lifelong commitment to had a secret that would alter everything. The ceremony went well. To the roaring cheers of the assemblage, vows were exchanged, prayers were spoken, and the pair was declared husband and wife. There was a noticeable feeling of pleasure, meaningful remarks, and laughing throughout the celebration that followed. For Isaiah, however, each second drew him further to the night he feared. After the festivities were over, the couple retired to their hotel room, where their marriage's actual reality would start. With apprehensive anticipation and excitement, Bianca walked inside the room. She had been waiting for this moment because she thought it was a lovely way for their religion and love to come together. At the same time, Isaiah stopped. He ducked out of her line of sight, his body rigid as he struggled to summon the strength to confront what was ahead. Bianca's happiness turned to bewilderment and eventually to a feeling of betrayal as the evening went on. The illusion of the guy she believed she knew was shattered by her revelation, which came like a thunderclap. Her face was a combination of surprise and incredulity as she gazed at him. Isaiah, you lied to me. The foundation of this whole marriage was a lie. Now, clearly scared, Isaiah attempted to explain, his voice quivering in desperation. You must realize that without me, no one would accept me. You must remain now that we are married. That is what the Bible says. Now steady, Bianca's voice broke the tension. So is this it? Was this the cause of your long-standing opposition to intimacy? To lie to me, knowing that if I had known, I would never have kept up our relationship? Being aware that I wouldn't have wed you? Isaiah could not speak after hearing her remarks. The embarrassment he had worked so hard to conceal was suddenly exposed. His secret, the one thing he had spent his whole life trying to hide, was revealed. As she went on, her voice trembled, her words piercing the very heart of his deceit. It's so little, your penis, Isaiah. You were aware of this, yet you choose to deceive me rather than be truthful. To hide your selfishness, you used religion to manipulate me. As she struggled to grasp what she had just learned, she muttered, "You're your body. You deceived me by using religion as a weapon. Isaiah, you tricked me into thinking this was about morality and purity, but it was just to cover up your penis." Isaiah leaned into the power he had always had as a preacher in an effort to retake control of the situation. "You vowed before God, Bianca. Marriage is a commitment you cannot abandon. This has to do with sacrifice and dedication." Bianca, however, was unmoved. "Isaiah, no. You have not given me the honesty and trust that are essential to a marriage. You have deceived me by using your position and your beliefs. You are worse than the things you advocate." As she started packing her things, her resolve remained unwavering. Isaiah's despair gave way to rage. He attempted to use scripture to support his argument that she should remain, appealing to her feeling of responsibility. Bianca, however, refused to be influenced as she now recognized him for who he really was. "Isaiah," she replied in a voice that was both sorrowful and determined, "this isn't love. I refuse to be bound by this deception for the rest of my life." As the lady he had worked so hard to mislead was ready to leave his life, Isaiah remained still. Everything had fallen apart on the night that was meant to be the start of their forever. What started off as a lavish celebration of love turned into a hotel room where there was silence, betrayal, and the weight of deceit. Alone with his humiliation and rage, Isaiah would soon come to the realization that his desperate attempt to conceal the truth would set him on a course from which he could never turn back. With determination, Bianca Ellington packed her things and walked around the room. Her heart pounded with rage and betrayal, despite her composed mask. This was not the marriage she believed she was committed to, nor was it the life she had envisioned for herself. Isaiah Blackwell remained still, observing her every action, his despair intensifying by the moment. He didn't know how to stop the ideal life he had painstakingly created from slipping away. "You're not thinking clearly, Bianca," he stated in a shaky voice. "You can't just walk away. We vowed to do something. This is meant to be resolved between us." Bianca didn't even hesitate. "Don't you dare discuss vows with me. Isaiah, you misled me. This union is a fraud." Despite her anger, she spoke steadily while staring him in the eyes. "I will not remain in it. I'll make sure no woman is duped by you again, since you are worse than what you advocated." Her comments struck him hard. As the truth of what she had spoken set in, his eyes became wide. "What are you discussing?" He walked up to her and inquired. "Isaiah, I was duped," she went on, slamming her suitcase shut, "and I'm filing for a divorce. I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about you now that you've lost me." Her remarks pierced his calm and caused a brief pause in which the room went quiet. Isaiah's breathing became labored. He felt sick to his stomach at the idea of Bianca telling the world his secret. Everything was on the line: his reputation, his life as a preacher, and his place in the community. "Bianca," he replied, gazing at him, "would you stay if you were in my shoes? Would you lead a lie-based life?" "Isaiah, you can answer by yourself. Get out of my path now." But Isaiah remained still. Rather, he blocked her passage by stepping in front of the entrance. "You can't abandon me," he shouted, raising his voice. "I can't be exposed. What would it do to me, do you know? To my standing?" Isaiah grabbed Bianca's arm and pulled her back as she went for the doorknob. "Give me up." Her voice reverberated around the room as she yelled. "This cannot be done to me." Isaiah's grasp tightened as he shouted, "You can't make me seem bad. I can't be embarrassed by you. I assumed you would comprehend." Struggling beneath his grip, Bianca snapped, "Know what? You told me a lie? Taken advantage of me? Tricked me? Isaiah, get go of me. I'm going to file for divorce. The altercation rapidly became more heated. Isaiah's despair was further increased by Bianca's disobedience. His feelings became unmanageable, with anxiety giving way to rage. Isaiah, filled with anger, hit Bianca as she yelled. Although the punch was swift, it had a terrible effect. With a terrible thud, Bianca's head hit the edge of the bed frame as she slumped back. He repeatedly struck her and said, "You can't bring disgrace to me. I can't be embarrassed by you. I assumed you would comprehend." She gave up. He worried when he understood what he had done. Unmoving, she collapsed to the ground. Isaiah fell to his knees next to her, shaking her shoulders and crying her name in terror as he stared at her dead corpse. "I didn't mean to," he said in a tremulous tone. "I didn't intend to, Bianca." Panic struck. With his thoughts racing, Isaiah stumbled to his feet and began to pace the room. He was aware of his actions and their consequences. His idyllic existence was ended. Isaiah started cleaning up the area in a desperate effort to hide his identity. He attempted to restore the room's natural appearance by wiping off surfaces and arranging furnishings. However, his acts were hurried and awkward. He took a little bag, packed some things in it, and ran away. His pale complexion and unsteady movements were recorded on video as he hurried out of the hotel. Although Isaiah had planned to flee, he was unable to avoid the repercussions of his conduct. The housekeeper came to clean the room the next morning. There was no response when she knocked on the door. She entered the room with her key and froze instantly. Blood gathered close to Bianca's head as her dead corpse lay on the ground. The housekeeper fled to notify the hotel personnel after screaming and dropping her cleaning tools. The cops were contacted within minutes. After arriving on the site, detectives got to work on their investigation. Part of the tale was revealed by the half-packed bag beside the door. A fierce battle was suggested by the toppled light and the faint smudges on the doorknob. The pieces started to fit together as they examined the evidence. Isaiah was seen on hotel security camera departing in the wee hours of the morning with a suspicious and rushed manner. Isaiah was immediately named as the main suspect by the authorities. Interviews with friends and relatives provided disturbing clues about the days before the wedding as they delved further into the connection. Some pointed out that Bianca had told them about Isaiah's resistance to physical touch, but she had explained it away as a result of his spiritual convictions. Others remembered that Isaiah seemed especially nervous and reserved throughout the wedding reception, but they put it down to the normal jitters of a wedding day at the time. Law officials began a search, using witness statements and credit card information to follow Isaiah's whereabouts. A guy who matched Isaiah's description was seen anxiously purchasing water and snacks, according to a petrol station employee. A week later, Isaiah was eventually discovered hiding in a dilapidated hotel in a different state. He was tired, unkempt, and obviously shaken. He raised his hands in surrender as the cops came in. As they put him in handcuffs, he said, "I knew you'd find me." Isaiah admitted to everything while he was being questioned. As he described what had happened that fateful night, his voice broke. He said, "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just couldn't let her go. She would destroy me. She intended to reveal to everyone my small penis, which is a bodily secret." He stumbled. "She intended to file for my divorce." But what he had done could not be undone by any amount of explanation. The once admired preacher and moral leader Isaiah Blackwell was now having to deal with the fallout from his deeds. The tragedy of Bianca's death left her family and community in shock, and Isaiah had to deal with the loss of all he had formerly valued in addition to the law, since the secret he had worked so hard to conceal was now public knowledge. On the first day of Isaiah Blackwell's trial, the courtroom was tense. Now sitting at the defendant's table with his head dropped and his hands shaking was the once respected pastor who had stood before his flock preaching morals and virtue. The court now had to determine the consequences of his acts. Without wasting any time, the prosecution presented its case. They portrayed Isaiah as a guy who had painstakingly constructed a fake persona in order to control others. They exposed a dishonest past that extended far beyond his marriage with Bianca Ellington. Former friends, former churchgoers, and even distant relatives came forward to recount situations in which Isaiah's behavior went against the moral principles he openly advocated. Prosecutors emphasized that Isaiah's choice to conceal his identity was a part of a long-standing pattern of control and manipulation rather than a single moment of poor judgment. Bianca's personal possessions, including a letter she had left on her phone soon after the wedding night, were used as evidence. This is a false marriage. Isaiah is not who he claims to be. They summoned witnesses to testify. Bianca's friends spoke about how, in the days before the wedding, she had voiced her worries but disregarded them because she thought Isaiah was really committed to his beliefs. According to a former churchgoer who testified about Isaiah's domineering actions inside the congregation, he was a manipulator who seemed to have spiritual power. Isaiah's defense team contended that his acts were the consequence of years of psychological turmoil rather than deliberate behavior. They portrayed him as a guy engulfed in fears stemming from a difficult upbringing. They summoned a psychologist to speak, describing how Isaiah had become desperate due to his ingrained fear of rejection. In an effort to win compassion, the defense emphasized that the deadly conduct was a panic attack brought on by his collapsing reality rather than a deliberate one. But the jurors remained unconvinced. Any efforts to defend Isaiah's behavior were eclipsed by the evidence of lying, manipulation, and the brutality of Bianca's killing. The jury arrived with the following judgment after weeks of passionate evidence and deliberations. The jury convicted Isaiah Blackwell of second-degree murder. The courtroom was rocked by the statement. As the truth of his statement set in, Isaiah sat still, his face becoming white. Because of the deliberate nature of his lie and the untimely death of Bianca Ellington, the court sentenced him to life in prison. Isaiah Blackwell, the premeditation in your acts cannot be disregarded by this court. According to the court, your actions have not only claimed a life, but also violated the confidence of a whole community. The family of Bianca, who had seen the whole trial, made a heartfelt remark. Bianca was a lively, affectionate lady, and her mother spoke about how terrible it was to lose her so abruptly and terribly. Her mother remarked, her voice shaking with sorrow, "She trusted you. You stole a piece of each and every one of us, not just her life. For what purpose? To keep your falsehoods safe?" Her remarks, which served as a sobering reminder of the terrible consequences of Isaiah's conduct, caused the courtroom to go quiet. Although Isaiah's conviction signaled the end of a devastating chapter in his life, those closest to him still had unanswered questions. His anecdote turned into a warning about the perils of unbridled authority and the fallout from dishonesty. Although the trial provided some closure for Bianca's family, the grief of her passing persisted. In an effort to shield others against deception, they founded a charity in her honor, promoting integrity and openness in interpersonal interactions. Now facing a life sentence, Isaiah had to face the consequences of his decisions. The bleak walls of a jail cell had taken the place of the life he had built on falsehoods. Now that everyone knew the things he had fought so hard to keep hidden, all he had left was guilt and the memory of the lady he had killed. This tale, which started out with optimism and faith, but ended in tragedy and treachery, serves as a sobering reminder of the terrible consequences of lying. We learn serious lessons from this tale about the perils of lying in relationships. Any effective relationship must be built on trust and honesty, and when these are compromised by deceit and manipulation, the results may be disastrous. This incident served as a sobering reminder to the community that blind faith may sometimes let deception to flourish unchecked. It's hard to avoid asking, was Isaiah bound to do this crime? Was Bianca ensnared by events beyond her control, or might she have avoided her fate? And more profoundly, did Isaiah's guilt and fears shape who he is now and bring about this terrible conclusion? Ultimately, the truth is unmistakable. Isaiah lost everything when he exposed the worst aspects of his character while attempting to conceal his secret. If this story was valuable to you, please subscribe for more.